Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Dawg Talk podcast. I'm your host, Harrison Reno, alongside me, co-host Dan Kiley. Wednesday evening, 7:30. I know the Hoop Dogs are in action tonight. I apologize. Not our fault that the snow or ice storm or whatever the heck you want to call that thing pushed the game to today. So if you want a second screen experience or a second audio experience, we're here tonight to be that for you, to provide a little commentary on your Georgia Bulldogs. And I guess with these hot topics, the two of them, the state of the college football universe. Dan, got a rather nice loaded show today. Got a couple things to hit, starting with hot topics. Then we'll get into what the headline suggests. The biggest key to Georgia winning a national championship in 2026. Technically, it's going to be 2027 that they can next win their next national title. But
unless they fix the schedule.
Yeah, unless they fix the schedule. But anyways, let's get right into it, Dan. Speaking of winning national championships, since moving to the 12-team playoff format, we've had the SEC. We've had two Big Ten or national champions. Before then, we had two straight national championships for Georgia. So the SEC and Big Ten. Which conference outside of those two has the best chance to win a national championship in college football?
Well, that's hard to say because, we've only got four now. It used to be the Power Five, but the Big 12 doesn't really count anymore. Or wait, it does. Hell, I don't know. I can't keep them straight anymore. But I think they showed you this year with the way that Miami was able to put together a roster that, and I know it's fun for us and we enjoy the punching bag that is the ACC. But, you do still have a team like Clemson who has the ability to play top-level football. Now, they have it for quite a while, and, part of that problem is that Dabo needs to get his stuff together and figure out if he wants to participate in this era of college football. But Miami is really putting together something I don't know how sustainable it is, but we're not saying who could win 4 or 5 national championships. We're just saying who could win one. And I think if you look at the landscape of college football right now, the SEC obviously spending a lot of money. You have the Big Ten spending a ridiculous amount of money. But I believe it is the ACC because I think you have a team like Clemson, you have a team like Miami. And you would have to think at some point FSU is going to figure it out. I mean, FSU is too good of a program not to be relevant. So I think the ACC right now is the biggest threat to win one. Just have that team pop up and win one. Hell, Miami almost did it this year. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I think the ACC is the obvious answer of currently going into the 2026, 2027 season. Miami looks like the team that is of those ACC playoff potential contenders. They look like the obvious answer. But I'm going to go to a dark horse, if you will. What if a Big 12 team wins it, Dan? What if
who do you have
Texas
in mind?
Tech and that oil money puts it together, figures out a way to spend money on both sides of the football? They're not much for recruiting at the high school ranks. They are a strict portal team under Joey McGuire. And with the backing of Cody Campbell, who wants to put as much money as possible into his program that he loves, that he played for, what if Texas Tech gets it right? Eventually puts together a star-studded roster from the portal, maybe mix in some high school talent. They got LaDainian Guyton. They're a dark horse. I think the Big 12 is a dark horse. I don't know anybody outside of Texas Tech in that conference has the revenue, has the resources to do it, but the Red Raiders look like they could hold a monopoly over that conference with Cody Campbell at their backing. That's one of the richest donors in all of the sport of college football right now. He is investing at high rates into that program, and even in a world where there's supposed quasi salary cap, I don't think everybody's abiding by it. Heck, we know not everybody's abiding by it because we've seen some contracts out there put out there in the public, thanks to Ross Dellinger. So I'm going to go with you. ACC is the most likely. I saw somebody today saying Miami probably should have a strong case to be the preseason number one. I don't know how I feel about that. Obviously, with the transfer of Darian Mensah, they have their quarterback question answered. But what about obviously some of these other teams in the mix? Ohio State rings to mind. Obviously, Georgia's going to have some conversation in that mix. Texas, heck, maybe even Oregon's going to be in that mix. I think the SEC is the most definite answer for this first hot topic. But of the remaining conferences, the Big 12 seems to be the second most likely. And after that, Dan, is it fair to say just anybody outside of those two conferences just doesn't stand a chance? Like, can there be an Indiana that rises to prominence in a non-Power 4 conference? Can it be done?
I think it's too difficult in today's landscape to say never, because they always say never, but it seems highly improbable and unlikely. But I mean, just look at that JMU team that fed into the Indiana team. I mean, that was a loaded football team, and then you had a Liberty football team that kind of popped up and was loaded for 1 year. You could, if you had a donor willing to just bend over backwards and pony up for a $40-50 million roster, and then you had a coach capable of leading that group, it could happen. I don't know where it would come from. I don't know exactly which team it would be. But never say never, Harrison. Like, out of the landscape, think of the teams that are like on the fringes. Like, who in your mind could be one of those teams that could just go for broke 1 year? It would have to be a school that comes for money, though.
I mean, I'm curious. The first name that comes to mind, but they just lost their coach, and so I'm not sure what that's going to look like. You think about USF; they were kind of on the fringe this year of being the G5's candidate in the college football playoffs. Got that early win at Florida. Alex Golish had them humming for a little bit there. Lost to Miami, and then they kind of fell out of that conversation. I assume Byron Brown, just their quarterback, is now going to be the starting quarterback at Auburn. This could be another. I don't know how many players that USF has that's now going to Auburn. I'll have to double check on that. But outside of that, I mean,
yeah, I don't think
know
it's
what the resources are like. I don't know what the resources are like at Boise State. I mean, that's a prominent program in terms of people know who Boise State is, but does Boise State have resources?
Yeah, you'd have to have a team that goes nuclear, where they're like, we don't care about anything. We're going to.
I mean, what about an Oregon State or Washington State? Two programs who used to be in the Pac-12.
Yeah, I just don't see them buying a championship. I just don't see it. So I don't know. Anyway, we could probably do a whole segment on that.
Next part of this, because I think we messed up here, Dan. And I guess key word is conference, but Notre Dame also factors in as independent in this conversation. I guess.
Well, that doesn't count.
We did say conference. We did say vocabulary as in conference, so that is a good note. But yeah, I guess just to get ahead of that, we said conference. But obviously, all right, rank this: Notre Dame, ACC, or Big 12. Who do you think can win a championship first?
Notre Dame.
Who will win a championship first? Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. I think they're constantly recruiting at a good enough level. I think Marcus Freeman is a really good coach. I mean, I see people pointing the finger and just having negative things to say about Marcus Freeman from time to time. I don't see it. I mean, obviously, coaches make mistakes sometimes, and they're not perfect. I mean, hell, Kirby makes his fair share of mistakes, and we forgive him because he ultimately wins. But Marcus Freeman is winning too. I don't know. That may be a little bit unfair to say, because a team like Miami is spending a lot of money right now to make sure that they are in the conversation. But one of the things that people forget is Notre Dame has, if not the biggest, one of the biggest fan bases in the entire country, and they have extremely wealthy alumni who are very proud to be Notre Dame alumni. It's like the conversations we were having kind of offline about who is Georgia's richest alumni, it gets a little fuzzy because not every single person is accounted for because not everybody reports their income. But, they listed Ryan Seacrest as the wealthiest alumni, which I think cannot possibly be true. But that's what Google says. But Ryan Seacrest doesn't give back to the University of Georgia, so what's the point?
Yeah. It's an interesting conversation. I mean, you'd have to go find some Georgia grads.
We don't have oil tycoons.
Yeah. You have to go find somebody. It might end up being some, some owner of a microchip company, just somebody who graduated from Georgia long ago and has gone on to, have $1 billion business or something. Second hot topic and final. This is a hot topic around college football. It's been a product of conversation the last 2 to 3 years, and now we're going to give our take. Has the Big Ten overtaken the SEC as the best conference in college football?
I'll let you go first because I have an opinion.
All right.
Go ahead.
My answer to this, it's nuanced. Where is the top teams in college football located right now? I'd say the Big Ten. When you look at the elite of the elite in college football, they have, I think, probably the closest thing to the elite teams. I think their best teams are better than everybody else right now. I don't think there were better teams. There weren't many teams better than Ohio State and Indiana this past year. I think their first tier in the conference, like John Green just said, is top heavy. I think they have really good teams in tier 1. But where I draw the line, where I think the Big Ten falls short in comparison to the SEC is that second and third tier. I don't think the talent disbursement in the Big Ten is as spread out. You don't have as many first-round draft picks coming from Northwestern or Nebraska, these second and third tier teams like you do in the SEC. So where is the best teams playing football right now? It's big in the Big Ten. Where is the deepest, more spread out conference? Where's the best talent? Not collectively, but individually. I think the SEC has the most individual talent in the sport, and that's bared out by the NFL draft. Now, that's not to say the Big Ten hasn't closed the loop a little bit, closed the hole in terms of draft picks over the last few years. But right now, in terms of depth, I give it to the SEC. Where's the best teams? So far, it's been the Big Ten.
All right, so you went exactly how I thought you would go, and that's kind of where I was headed also, is I think part of the conversation has to be that the Big Ten has always been good football, right? Like Big Ten historically has always played good football. The SEC historically has always played good football. There were ebbs and flows where maybe the best football was played up north and not down south. I mean, if you think back to the late 80s, early 90s, I mean, Alabama wasn't Alabama at that point. Georgia had kind of fallen off a little bit. Florida had a comeuppance. I mean, it was, it really wasn't all that. But once the South decided to, that it just means more philosophy took over, the arms race at the facilities, the SEC just exploded and nobody else could keep up. Now, because of NIL and stuff like that, where a lot of those big donors now can get involved. And you have to also understand that a lot of those northern schools have a lot of enterprises, or a lot of big corporations as part of their alumni base. So they do have a lot of money, and then they have decided to start spending money. So to your point, the gap is closed significantly. It's not as wide as it used to be. And right now you have a handful of teams. And I really hate to put Indiana in there because I just think this is just a fake. Like, I don't think it's sustainable, but maybe it is. And I could be proven wrong. And if I am, I am. I mean, it is what it is. I'm just a guy with an opinion. But Ohio State isn't going away. Michigan is never going to go away. Iowa comes and goes as they please. Nebraska used to be amazing. They're not so much anymore. Oregon looks like they're going to be around for a while. USC is USC, and if they ever figure shit out on the West Coast, then they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. So yeah, they have some really good teams there. But I think overall, top to bottom, just talent of the roster And I'm not talking about winning percentages or anything like that, because the SEC does beat up on each other. And that's not something that anybody wants to acknowledge. And they think it's just a stupid talking point, but it's not. I mean, it's a true story. It does happen. But I still think SEC top to bottom is the best conference in college football. But as you mentioned, that gap is closed significantly. And if you probably went 1 through 5 versus 1 through 5, it could go either way. Yeah, there's a chance that the Big Ten could win it. Now, what I would tell you is if you went 6 through the bottom, I think the SEC comes out on top of that. And a lot of times what happens in these bowl games, just one other little point, Harrison, is a lot of times you'll have like Big Ten number 3 versus SEC number 7. And then the Big Ten wins, they're like, haha, we beat you in a bowl game. Well, yeah, I got you. But it's not apples to apples. So, listen, I acknowledge the top of the Big Ten is extremely strong, maybe even better than the SEC. But top to bottom, I still think it's the SEC. And you can call me homer, call me whatever you want. It's my opinion. I'm entitled to it. Harrison, back to you.
I think you bring up a good point. 7 through 16. Which teams are more talented? I would say the SEC probably has more talent 7 through 16 in terms of disbursement. I think 7 through 16 is where the Big Ten falls apart, because the gap between the SEC's 8 through 19 this year, and I want to go look at the standings to bring up this point, Dan. Because if you look at who was the 8th team, here, I'm going to pull up these standings. We'll make this point right here on air. Shout out Google for being always ready for us. Go down to the bottom here. All right, obviously Georgia and Alabama are at the top. Look at who's in the bottom here. Looking at, this is the 16th team. You have South Carolina. They have Lenore Sellers and Dylan Stewart. Go up just 2 spots. Auburn, they had Cam Coleman. They had 2 top 64 picks on their defensive line, and Kieran Crawford and Keldrick Falk. You don't have that when you look at the standings of the Big Ten. When you get down to the bottom tier of these teams, there is a significant talent gap from the top teams to the bottom. And there's a significant NFL draft selection gap in terms of Northwestern, or whoever the heck was in Auburn's position in that conference, doesn't have the same amount of NFL-ready players that an Auburn does in a 5-7 season.
Right. And again, we're not saying the top of the conference isn't level. We're just saying the bottom of the conference. And I think that's part of the conversation when you say what's the better conference. And, one of the things that hurts like an SEC, it hurts the Big Ten, it hurts every conference, right, is when you have a team who underperforms like at Auburn or at Tennessee. They underperform, right? But Tennessee could beat anybody on any given day. They just underperformed as a whole. And, I think what he meant to say was it just means Sankey may have hurt the conference more by agreeing to 9 games. And if that's what he meant to say, which I 100% believe so, I agree with him 100%. Adding that 9th game is brutal. Was it Kirby or somebody else that said that like every single team now has 1 more loss? Like you're hurting
9 more losses in the conference.
So
it was Roddy last week that talked about that, how not many coaches are happy about being beaten over the head and bullied into having a 9th game in the conference. So, and people will take that as they will. Non-SEC fans will look at that and laugh at it. But I do think there is some good discussion in terms of the risk and all that of playing a 9th game. Dan, let's segue into our overall main event segment, if you will. What is Georgia's biggest key to winning a national championship in 2026? Some say quarterback, some say offensive line, some say receivers, some say the improvement of the defense. And while I won't discount all of that, because there are valid points within that, you obviously need a good quarterback. You need strong offensive line play. You need strong play from your skill players in your defense. I think here's the big key. Go back to the 2024 recruiting class. And look what Georgia brought in that year. I'll pull it up now for everyone to see, and you'll start to get the gist here. Georgia had the #1 recruiting class in 2024. This class included the likes of Ellis Robinson, Justin Williams, KJ Bolden, Joseph Jonah-Jonier, Chris Cole, DeMello Jones, and yes, Nate Frazier, among others. What do all these people have in common? These are the guys that are going to be the face of Georgia's program in 2024. All of these people are going to be key contributors on a team that is going into the season with expectations of competing for a national championship. Dan, it wasn't long ago that there was a saying, and not really a saying, but it was kind of a theory that was proven. If you get the #1 recruiting class in any given year, you set yourself up for a 3 to 4 year window where you can win a national championship because you're getting the best talent in the country out of high school, and you get a 3 or 4 year window to add to your roster and have that as the foundation for your potential championship team. And if you go back to the last time Georgia was kind of in this position in terms of having the #1 class, they ended up winning a championship. You go back to 2019. They had the #1 ranked or the #2 ranked class. It was 2018. They had the #1 class. That #1 class had people like Zamir White, Jamari Sawyer, Adam Anderson, Quay Walker, James Cook. You go to the year after that, 2019. You get Nakobe Dean. You get those guys, the foundation of that 2021 national championship team. Dan, we talked about roster management for the last 2 weeks. What's the best way to win a championship in this era of college football? I think people are split on the fence. I think coaches, current head coaches in the NFL, or in the college football, not the NFL, I'm sorry, are on the fence. Because we've seen schools like Ohio State and Texas, programs that have prided themselves on building it the, quote, right way through high school and supplementing through the portal, take heavy portal classes. While Georgia has come out of the portal this year with that same mindset of we're supplementing our roster with the portal, and they took the least amount of players through the portal in the SEC. The least out of all of them.
You're only able to do that when you're able to retain your roster. You know, we were going through draft classes. We were going through recruiting classes earlier today, and we were talking about them. And if you look at the class, right? So we had the #1 class in 2024, right? Or 2020. We're talking 2024.
2024.
Right. So this class will be juniors. If you go through there and you look at that class that was rated really high, you know, sometimes it gets rated high, but guys are, you know, don't pan out to be what they're supposed to be. We went through there and you look at the top names on that draft class or that recruiting class, and they're all hits. It's just hit after hit after hit after hit. And then more importantly, not only did they hit, not only were they what we are told they were, but they're still on the roster. And, you know, the guy, so the way I say it for roster management, my theory on the way it works best and the way that Georgia's been able to sustain success is you have to have a really good high school class. You have to be able to identify which ones are hits, which ones are misses, get rid of the ones that are misses, and then be able to supplement that. Well, obviously, the next recruiting class, you want to try to fill the holes, right? But when you have those gaps where you have a glaring weakness, where you have that missing piece, is go find that person in the portal that you can plug and play and will fill that gap and fill that missing piece of your roster. And I think the reason that we've seen Georgia have sustained success is because if you go back and you look at their classes, for the most part, all of the kids that they bring in end up hitting. And then the ones who don't, they're gone before they have a chance to create a cavernous hole in your roster. Now, obviously, some other teams have been able to supplement the roster a little bit better, and we haven't been able to win the national championship. But, you know, winning a national championship is not guaranteed every single year. So It's just like, for me, it's just, yeah, I see you're putting up the retention, but you didn't put up 2024.
I have it hidden for a reason.
Okay. Okay, good. Yeah.
I was just gonna let you talk through that, because to your point, when you recruit at the way Georgia does, when you want to build your roster the way Georgia wants to build its roster, you're right. It's not. It doesn't just stop and end like it did maybe 7-8 years ago with recruiting them out of high school. Now you have to re-recruit your roster every single year. Every single cycle, you have to recruit your roster. And I don't want to say Georgia failed at recruiting its own roster, because they retained a lot of, some really key players in these recruiting classes. But you look at the retention rates, these dropped off massively from the years before. And obviously, the transfer portal is a big part of that. NIL is a big part of that. Look at the 2023 class. Georgia took 26 players out of high school. This does not include transfers. They lost 18 of them to the transfer portal. They retained just 31% of their roster. 2023, that's supposed to be your senior class for this coming season, your senior class, and you have just 31% of your original 2023 class. Now, I didn't count, when I say retain 31%, guys who are either on the roster still or guys who stayed at Georgia went to the NFL. So you're talking 8, probably less than 8 players from that original 2023 class that are seniors on your football team. You go down to 2022. Took 30 players, you retained just 17 of them. It's 56%. Go down the year before that, you retained just 50%, 10 of your 20. And Dan, shall we reveal the number for 2024? I'll scroll down. 80% of your number 1 ranked class has been retained by your coaching staff. 80%. And you've lost just 6 players of the 29 high school recruits you signed in that class. You've lost just 6 of them. And here's the list: Nayor Daniels, Marquise Easley, Chris Jones, Jordan Thomas, Nitro Tuggle, Andre Evans. Dan, they haven't lost a single 5-star from that entire class.
And that goes to the ability to identify talent, because one of the most dangerous things about the recruiting services right now is that a lot of these kids do really well at these camps and they get these high ratings, and then the competition that they play maybe doesn't add up. And so when they get to a bigger school, and this isn't Georgia specific, it's kids specific, right? They get to the school that they're going to go to, and maybe it doesn't work out the way that it was supposed to, or they're not exactly what they were. So to be able to retain that level of talent is one thing, but then to identify the right kids and get them in here, develop them, and then nurture those kids into what is a really strong junior class right now. It goes back to that's probably the most talented part of this coaching staff, is the talent identification and the development. Now, in game, we make some mistakes here and there. Everybody can point fingers, whether it be Bobo or Kirby or Shu or whoever, right? Yeah, mistakes happen. I saw one of the comments there is it takes a lot of luck to win a national championship. 100% it does, because you have to stay injury free. You got to get the right teams at the right time. I mean, look at the way that the playoffs worked out for Georgia this year. We get a team that we already beat with with an attitude of us against the world because their coach had just left them. I mean, the storylines wrote themselves for sure. And it was one of those things where Ole Miss wasn't going to be denied in that game. But if we had played somebody else, could it have been different? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. If Drew Bobo plays, is it different? Who knows? There's so many different if, ands, or buts. But the one thing that remains constant, and I think that's the reason that we're even talking about this right now, is the one thing that's constant is the best roster in the sport, the healthiest roster in the sport, typically wins. And that's, if you go back, and I did it last night just for fun. I went back and watched on ESPN Plus. They have this thing. It's called Inside the National Championship or College Playoff, whatever it was. You can find it on Disney Plus or whatever. It's on there. Go find it. They go all the way back to the season before Georgia won their first national title. And if you go through there over and over and over again, whenever they were talking to Kirby, he says, we have the most talented roster in the country. Every single time he pointed it out. We have the most talented roster. Now, you have to coach them up for sure. But it always comes back to Jimmy's and Joe's, not X's and O's. And so, there's a lot of comments here in our chat that echo that statement. You've got to stack these rosters with talent any way you can. And the penalty for missing on kids and misidentifying kids is you're not going to win. So,
and I see this, and I was just about to point this out, Steve Rosie, because you are absolutely right. Indiana had 0 5-stars on that team. Now, granted, it's 0 5-stars as of when they were ranked in high school. I'm sure if you go back and rank those guys now, and when they got them in the portal, compared to when they got them in the portal, there might be a 5-star or 2 or guy in there. But yes, that's a great point, because for the longest
also 24
time,
and 25 years old.
Yeah. For the longest time, the blue chip ratio was the thing, and it still is. And it's the percentage of your roster that are 4 and 5-star players. And that was CBS Sports. Bud Elliott does a tremendous job. Every single year, he releases the blue chip ratio. And you have to have 50% of your roster filled with blue chips to be considered a team that can win a national championship. Until last year, it hadn't really been broken. Indiana broke it. But that's to Dan's point earlier in the show. That feels more like a
outlier.
I don't want to say a fluke, but yeah, it feels like an outlier. I don't know how many more 8% blue chip ratio teams we're going to see winning it all. Can it be done? Absolutely. Mr. Google Me proved it. But will it be done sustainably?
You also had a kid in Fernando Mendoza who had one of the greatest years ever as a quarterback. I mean, maybe not Joe Burrow great, but I mean, Fernando Mendoza was friggin' incredible. And for the people who say, oh, Indiana had no talent. Okay, yeah, all right. Every team in the country wanted Fernando Mendoza. It's not like he was lined up at people's doors and they were like, no, sir, we don't want you. You're no good. Indiana's the only place that will take you. That's not at all how that played out. So
Miami and Georgia wanted him last year.
You can miss me with that narrative. You have a wide receiver who's as good as they come. You had an incredible defense, talent all over the field. Now, going into the national championship on our show, we've talked about a lot of those kids came from JMU. So, it's not like Indiana built an all-star team by plucking the best players off of every team. That's not what they did. They had a group of guys that were with Cignetti at JMU, and they were coached up, and they came with them because they wanted to continue. You have to credit him for what he did. Nobody's trying to take away from what Indiana accomplished. We're just saying, as an overall, Jimmy's and Joe's friggin' matter. And I don't care if Indiana didn't have any 5-stars. They had some friggin' good players, and you can't win without them. You can't scheme up anything to stop a guy who runs a 4.4 if your corner runs a 4.9. So, there's some ballers. Chris Winkie at 29. Age does make a difference.
It absolutely
100%.
does.
That's freaking spot on. I mean, the fact that their average age is 24 and whatever, 24 and change, yeah, that's a big freaking deal. Going up against 19-year-olds. Just think about your development as a person, right? Like when you were young and you were playing basketball against like a pickup game of basketball, there's old man strength. Like anybody's ever played pickup basketball knows about old man strength. Like, dude, there's nothing you could do with that 35-year-old when you're 19 years old. Like, it's just your body matures. I don't know. We kind of went off on a tangent, didn't we?
Hey, that's what we're known for. But Dan, I did pull up the list or the recruiting just to kind of illustrate our point. And Jed has done a tremendous job over in UGASports.com, which, by the way, join the day for $1. Get your first week for $1. Includes a complimentary year of The Athletic. Just wanted to throw that out there. Doing the departure costs of all these guys. And you look at some of the guys Georgia's lost from that 22-23 recruiting class. I'm pulling up 20 now. They did a marvelous job of retaining their top 2 players from this class in Malachi Starks and Michael Williams, but you lost on a guy like Marvin Jones Jr. Didn't really pan out at Georgia. Don't know if you would say he's a hit in terms of a 5-star. Don't think he's going to be a first-round draft pick. James Singletary is not going to be a first-round draft pick. He transferred. You lose Bear Alexander, a productive player as a freshman, was set to have a really strong sophomore season at Georgia, transferred in the spring. And then obviously through the list, you lose a Branson Robinson, you lose a Julian Humphrey. The list goes on. You go to 2023. You lose Damon Wilson. You lose A.J. Harris after his freshman season. You lose out on Sam Mpemba. Obviously, Jonell Guerrero was a hit for you until he just transferred. And obviously, he really transferred because you have a talent like Rayshawn Dinkins in the room now. So Georgia's done a tremendous job retaining its roster compared to years past, because if you were to lose an Ellis Robinson, if you were to lose, heck, even a Justin Williams, KJ Bolden, Chris Cole, Joseph Jonah, those are guys that in terms of departure costs would be more towards 7, 8, 9 in terms of 1 through 10. How bad does it hurt? Damon Wilson was a 10 on the departure cost scale. That is as big of a hurt as it gets. And so far this offseason, Georgia's highest departure cost was a 7. And it was Dominic Kelly and Jonell Guerrero. So all these guys have probably had somebody in their mentions at some point in their phone at another school trying to pluck them away. Georgia shut it down. I mean, it's public at this point. Georgia had to retain Nate Frazier. It's very public what happened there. We talked about it with Roddy last week. Same thing. Scroll down a little bit. You see a guy like Chauncey Bowens, a guy who wasn't the highest rated running back in the class. He's turned into a productive player. He's going to be a 1-2 punch this season. He had interest in the portal. And there were some rumors about him going out. Georgia retained them all. So I like how Roddy put it last year, Dan. He said how people that he talked to were talking up a big game and how Georgia had a war chest and Georgia was going to spend money on the portal going into the offseason. And Georgia did spend its war chest, just not as much on the actual portal talent. It was spent on retaining its own players. And, will this pay dividends in the end? We don't know. We'll see. Will they go win a national championship? Will they win a playoff game? If they do, they are on their way to making it successful. But the reason Georgia's not out here with a Cam Coleman or just, 20 portal players is because they're banking on that number 1 recruiting class from 2024 being their portal class that sets them up to win a national championship in 2026. And that's why. That's the biggest key to Georgia in 2026 toward winning a national championship. Dan, before we wrap it up, final 2 questions. Thoughts on Stacey Searles stepping down into an analyst role and Phil Roncher taking over as offensive line coach? And then lastly, John Green asked this, thoughts on Tom Monken becoming the head coach of the Browns?
Stacey Searles stepping down. He's never really been a fan favorite, Searles. If you look at what he did to the offensive line roster before he left the first time, you could almost say that it was criminal. Now, when he came back, I think the staff around him prohibited the deterioration of that line group. I think they did pretty good. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other about him not being there. I don't know anything about the guy who's taking his place. But if Kirby and the guys in that room, the brain trust in that room, feel like he's a good fit for what they want to do, I give him the benefit of the doubt. Listen, Sam Pittman's not walking through that door. Not today, not tomorrow. As far as I'm concerned, He's the best offensive line coach I've ever seen in my entire life. I obviously it wasn't going to happen, but Ledford, the offensive line coach for the Falcons, who got let go, is a top 5 offensive line coach in the NFL. I don't know why they didn't put in a phone call there, but maybe they just really like the guy they got. But I know that Stacey Searles is kind of a punching bag for some people, and our offensive line hasn't been as good as it was in the past. But I felt like they did a pretty good job this year. Last year was bad. Okay, last year was bad. This year, I felt like they did pretty good. They had a productive year. It was hard to point at the offensive line and say you're the problem. I don't feel like that's true. Now, I will say one of the things is they haven't been bringing in the bell of the ball, but those guys are getting paid a lot of money right now. I mean, the number one tackle in this class was it Jackson Cantwell. Do I remember that right? Mm-hmm. Went to Miami and he got paid a lot. The number one portal tackle is the kid from Colorado who went to LSU. Chuck Oliver today said north of $3 million to play offensive line for 1 year in the SEC. God bless him. That's a lot of damn money. But and then the second question, Monken taking over the Cleveland Browns. God bless you, Todd Monken. You deserve better than that, my friend. I hope you enjoy it. You got a shit show of an organization and a shit show of an offensive room. So, hey, but if anybody,
you got a Pro Bowl quarterback,
brother. Huh?
You got a Pro Bowl quarterback.
Jesus, Pete.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's gonna wrap it up.
I have one last thing to say. Listen, if you guys want to harass Harrison in the comments, this man refuses to watch the movie Blue Chips. So I've been on him for 3 months to watch the damn movie Blue Chips, and he refuses to watch it. So if you want to harass Harrison with how bad of a friend he is by not watching the movie Blue Chips, have at it. Look, his Twitter's right there on his handle, Harrison Reno. Tell him Blue Chips is worth the watch. Thank you. I bid you adieu.
Hey, while we're at it, if we're just airing out laundry here, let's air out some
positive
congratulations
stuff?
here. Yeah, some good laundry, some clean laundry. Dan, your kid announced his commitment yesterday. Cannon Kiley is now officially committed to go play his football at LaGrange.
Hey, that's my boy.
Everyone, please offer your congratulations to Cannon and Dan. This is a huge moment for them. I've known for a little bit that he was going to end up in LaGrange, but I was waiting on our guy to put it out there. And I'm really excited. Excited for Dan and his family. Obviously, Cannon to go out there and play college football at the next level. It's a huge deal. D1, D2, D3, doesn't matter. You're playing in a sport, you're in a fraternity that is as exclusive as it gets. So, Dan, congratulations to you, your kid, your family. Years of hard work paying off right here. It's awesome, dude. It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm really, really happy for him. He's worked his ass off to even be in this position to play. And, one thing I would want to say is thank you to all those coaches out there who gave him the time, invited him on the visits, spent time. I mean, I think that's one of the things that you and I both know, and I think a lot of people understand, is how much time and effort these coaches put into it or whatever. So just the fact that there's a coach anywhere that would take the time to talk to my son and give him the opportunity. So we're extremely grateful for all of the opportunities he got, and we're even more grateful for the home that he found, and we're really, really excited about it.
Yeah. So if you see Dan out in LaGrange, you know why. If you ever catch yourself out in LaGrange, see a game, let us know. Anyways, we appreciate y'all for being here. This is the Dawg Talk podcast, live at 7:30 every Wednesday here on the UGASports YouTube channel. That's Dan Kiley. I'm Harrison Reno. Not with us tonight, but he will be with us surely at some point. Probably next episode, we hope. Koby Pyrz, former long snapper for Georgia, played under Coach Smart. We will see you next time here on the Dawg Talk podcast.
New daddy.
Congratulations in order to him as well, by the way. Two things to celebrate on this show.
He's got a couple-week-old little girl, and she's doing great. So we're just giving him the time he needs to get settled in, and he'll be back on the show before you know it.
Hey, you can expect when football season rolls around, Koby will be in our group chat asking, "Hey boys, let's get it rolling." So, anyways, we'll see you next week.
Go Dogs.